Good. Okay. So here I'm with Lenny, and something I was just thinking about. I did one of my home coaching sessions this last weekend with an older 87-year-old woman who's done a lot in her lifetime. She was very, very, very successful, and has worked with tons of people, and built a very large business. And anyways, she's had her dog for a few years now, and he's very barky and very insecure, and overall just doesn't listen. Hasn't been taught much. And she's not necessarily in the most physical capable. She's not very physical and capable to work with him. And I sort of knew through the interaction that she probably wasn't going to do too much. She wasn't going to do too much and implement too much of what I was saying, just based on her state. And so, but I was trying to come in and give her some simple things to work on. But when it comes to the longer home coaching sessions I'm doing, that's 2.5, 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours long, that we're there really breaking things down, trying to really get a good understanding of where we're at and whatnot. So we're not just kind of coming in and working on obedience and a couple of small things here and there. We're really breaking down understanding in theory, and because these things take a long time, right? They take a long time. I mean, again, teaching obedience is one thing, but understanding the whys and the nuances and how to problem solve and navigate and really develop and mold the behaviors that you're looking for, that really takes a lot of understanding. But it was a very challenging session for myself, because this is someone who I needed to connect, why her dog was behaving a certain way. Okay, so let me just make sure that we're being clear here on what we want Lainey to do, because it's getting a little goofy. Stay. So we need to make sure that we're being clear with work mode, which is going to go into what I want to explain here real quick. So I gave her a few little tidbits. Really, the dog had been peeing around the house, right? He'll pee around the house. It's a very, very, very large house, very open space, and he really just has too much freedom. And they didn't really teach him how to, respect small space first, and then gradually increase his ability to roam around the house, right? So, but anyways, I gave her some homework to work on for that, and try to break down understanding. And then, at the end, I showed her some of the videos of what we're doing here, right? Of us teaching the obedience, and showed her a couple of videos of the dogs when they were done with their programs and what they were able to do with distractions and whatnot. And she looked at it, and she said, we finished the video, and she said, oh, well, I don't have any interest in doing what you just showed me, right? Like I don't have any interest in doing that, and I don't really see why anyone should really do it, because she referred to it as a circus act, right? Like the dog being able to do their obedience around the basketball or the skateboard or whatever it was a circus act. And I 100% agreed with her. I said, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Like, obedience alone is just a trick. Like, each obedience command is essentially just a trick. So I really wanted to get the point across that, yes, obedience alone is a trick, but it's how you use it. It's the understanding that it's the language between you and your dog. It's also the tool that allows you to give your dog direction, right? So it's how you develop skills in the dog, the patience, the self-control, the impulse control, the ability to take direction, the ability to listen to you, right? So, I mean, maybe it didn't pertain to her dog with the peeing issue, but maybe it would. I mean, bottom line is, for majority of our problems with our dogs, they would all be solved if your dog just listened to you, right? If your dog listened to you, your problems would go away. You'd be able to stop them from doing things, or you'd be able to, develop the behaviors that you're looking for and sort of curb the unwanted ones, right? Because now you can tell them what to do instead of what you don't want them to do. And so maybe in her situation, I told her, well, maybe if you could tell him to lay down and stay, he wouldn't be roaming around the house peeing. But he doesn't know how to lay down and stay. And if you don't put any value on that, then you're missing the whole point of teaching your dog how to take direction from you and giving them a job to do, right? Which he also had a lot of separation issues. He had separation anxiety. She's like, oh yeah, he follows me around everywhere. I said, well, sure, you need to be able to tell him to stay while you go to the kitchen, or while you go here and you go there, and give him a job to do, and then you can come back to him. So the point is, why do we teach obedience? Because obedience doesn't solve your problems. Sure, all of the dogs come in and get training and get a great foundation, but it doesn't solve their owner's problems. Now, the dog, I believe, is going to be 50% better than before because he's very well educated, right? He takes direction better, has patience and self-control and impulse control, and you have a language now, but you have to use it, right? You have to implement it. You still have to create the structure and the boundaries and the rules, and then implement your language within that. So that is why we teach obedience. Because, and so at the end of our session there, she went to take care of payment, and she went to her office, and the dog started barking at me, right? As soon as I got up, he started barking at me, and then, anytime I would turn my back, he would bark at me. And so I could hear her get demanding with him. I could hear her, Gucci, cut it out. She started getting demanding, and he would kind of turn away from me, and then he would bark at me again, and then she would continue with her demandingness, and eventually it subsided and he laid down. And so she came out, and I said, well, I heard you just get a little more sort of demanding with him. And she was like, well, yeah, because all of that barking at you is annoying. And I said, well, yeah, I agree. But your demandingness essentially worked right now. You were able to stop him. So why don't you just do that? I told her she didn't want to put a leash on him either, right? I pulled out a rope lead, and he was taking some food from me, and I was just trying to develop a bit of a relationship with him, but she didn't want to put on a leash on him, and he was actually growling from the leash, right? He was growling. And so I said, well, look, again, your problem is he doesn't take any direction from you. He doesn't listen to you. He doesn't even know how to be on a leash. No wonder you're having behavior problems, right? Because you're not able to implement any type of listening skills because you haven't taught him anything. So, but she was able to control him with some demandingness, with attitude, right? She was throwing him attitude, Gucci, cut it out, right? And then she would continue to do that until he stopped. And so finally, your dog figures out, okay, if I'm doing a certain behavior and I'm getting this negative feedback, and that negative feedback goes away once my behavior subsides, that's how they figure that out, right? So I broke that down. I said, well, look, you honestly don't need to do anything I just told you if you just kept up with your demandingness there. Now, that's not going to solve your peeing issue, but it should at least stop your barking. He's going to continue to bark, but it becomes controllable, so if you don't want to do any obedience and any teaching and develop the skills for him to take direction from you at a higher level, well, now you're just going to have to control his behavior, right? Because you're not going to be able to teach him the alternative, right? What would have been the alternative? She would have been able to tell him to lay down and stay while her guest came in and walked around and he's not barking. But if you don't want to do that, now he's going to be left to his own with no direction, and if he decides to bark, now you just have to control it. So, the point was, you don't have to do any of that. As long as you're willing to control your dog's behavior when they show it. I also just think that you're not really teaching him what he should be doing, right? What did we want him to do? Well, she was telling me when she has a dinner party and guests come over, her guests are feeding him from the table. She doesn't want that. And I'm like, okay, well, you have a couple of options. Put him away. Oh, I can't put him away because he barks and howls. Right, because you have a separation problem, because you haven't worked on that, right? So then you can't tell him to lay down and stay on his bed next to, the table because he doesn't know how to lay down and stay. You haven't taught him any obedience. So your only other option is put him on a leash and keep him with you by your side, by your chair, and have him there. So you have to then just control him, right? So again, the point of obedience is it gives you the tools and the language to give your dog direction and tell them what to do, which again will hopefully curb what the dog wants to do. What does the dog want to do? He wants to bark. He wants to run after things. He wants to go to your guests and get food from them under the table. You know, any of those unwanted behaviors, like that's what the dog wants to do. It's an unwanted behavior from our side, not from the dog side, right? So that is the point of obedience, right? That is the point of obedience. And even here, look at this right now, right? Lenny's on a downstay, but he's messing around. He'll try to get into the treat pouch, or he'll push on me a little bit too much after I give him some praise and things like that. So that's just sort of controlling that side of things, even though he's already on command, right? So your commands and your obedience give you something to fill the dog's brain with. Well, now you're halfway there. If your dog's brain is filled and has a job to do, you're halfway there, right? And also, your dog will become fulfilled that way, right? Because now, all of a sudden, Lenny's job is to listen. And through his listening, he gets rewarded, he gets praise, he gets affection, he gets the ball, he gets whatever he wants. And so all of a sudden your dog has a purpose, right? The purpose is to listen to mom, dad, leader, whatever you want to call yourself. That's the dog's purpose. So that's what I believe we teach obedience for, right? To again, give us a language, to give your dog direction. And that's only 50% of it. Like I said, that's only half the battle. You still have to learn how to implement it. Dogs aren't always going to listen. I mean, again, our dog, you know, Honey's 12 years old, or, you know, Dia and Micah being older also, they're not always going to listen, right? They're not always going to listen. So, but, and there's where, you know, certain work is done and implemented, but meaning like you have to put reps in, right? And you have to like challenge the dog. You need to take them out, put them on the long line, like work what you've taught. Or again, you got to work your doorbell and have people come over, or whatever it is. You know, you still have to implement the obedience that you've taught, right? But I kind of wanted to share that, where, you know, again, and this has happened before, where I've had someone also say, well, like, I've never taught my dog how to sit. Like, I've never taught any of my dogs how to sit. I never really saw the need to. I'm like, well, you're really not understanding that your dog doesn't take any direction from you because you haven't taught them how to listen. If your dog doesn't listen to simple obedience commands, how can you expect them to listen, you know, with distraction and try to like mold the behaviors you're looking for, right? So the point of obedience is really to develop the language between you and your dog. And obviously the stronger that the obedience is, the stronger the language is, right? The stronger the dog's understanding of their commands, the more useful they become for you. And maybe, you know, now your dog can maybe even live a more sort of free life because they listen. They can be included more, right? And also a less stressed life, more stress-free, right? So yeah, I mean, because going back to the session that I did, that dog is stressed. Why is he stressed? Because he's not being given any direction. If he had been told what to do, now he doesn't have to worry about barking at everybody who comes through the door. And then every time that person turns around and walks away, he barks and feels like he has to control the situation, right? So he's stressed. So that's my take real quick on why we might teach obedience, why it's important, and why you want to teach it at a high level, right? Why you really want to proof obedience. You want to work distractions, you want to work time, and you want to work distance. You want to proof it so that it becomes stronger, so your dog's understanding is stronger and it's more reliable for you. So again, that was a very interesting session for me. I love my conversation with her. Anybody who's had those longer sessions with me or just spent a lot of time, you'll know that we're going back and forth, we're breaking down ideas. I love when someone might sort of challenge that and say like, well, why would I ever do that? You know, because then I have to connect some dots there to really try to, I'm not trying to convince you. I know it works because I'm doing it. I've implemented it. I've raised dogs, right? I know it works. It's really up to the other person's curiosity to say, well, obviously what I'm doing isn't working, so let me try this, right? Because, you know, I don't seem to have the same problems that the owners have. So what am I doing that's different than what you are doing? And so we need that curiosity to be sparked, right? It has to be a curiosity there, and that's across the board in anything. Obviously, there's always going to be someone who's greater at whatever it is that you are trying, okay, than you. And so you have to have some type of level of curiosity there to say like, okay, well, they know a little bit more, so let me try to, understand what they're saying here. And you might be challenged, right? You might be challenged in your understanding or what you've been doing, or, and someone's going to tell you like, hey, yeah, that's incorrect. Hey, the way you've been dealing with your dog is incorrect, and you have to realize that, right? So, which is difficult for some people. It's difficult, right? Because for whatever reason, when it comes to dogs, logic is out the window, right? Logic is out the window. And it's such an emotionally driven relationship with a dog for most people, and they stop thinking logically. And I believe, again, dogs are very logical creatures with themselves. So the moment that your dog figures out you're not logical anymore, it's like all your leadership skills are gone. Because a dog needs a logical leader, right? They need someone who can think clearly for the two of you so that you're somebody that can be relied upon. Okay, so even something like this again here, he gets distracted, and then what I know about him is if you let Lenny start smelling too much, he's gonna get up, right? So I kind of have to be, again, logical here and say, well, I need to check his smelling so that doesn't lead to him getting up. And we've shown this hundreds and hundreds of times with different dogs, where if you allow those little small things to happen, the dog's like, oh, cool, I can smell, okay, well, I'm gonna get up. Or I can smell here, now I'm gonna smell, a foot away, and then eventually I'm gonna get up. So, even here, again, we're kind of going super long here, and we can keep breaking little small tidbits down, but just wanted to give you that feedback there on a really great session. Stay with someone who, again, is older, 87 years old, very successful in what they've done, very successful in their mindset also, but wasn't really connecting the dots there between herself and her dog. Stay.